Hello and welcome. My name is Mary McElhatton. Welcome to the Permission Mission Show. We are here today at WWDBTV sharing what we talk about every week. I have a very special guest with us today who's going to share her personal stories about grief. Permission Mission is a show that we talk about the hard stuff. It's a show that we talk about normalizing mortality so that we have better understanding, where we can find some peace in our passing, and we can find also some peace in being prepared, because Alexis Abendano is a guest here today to share her own loss. And she is a writer, she's an advocate, she's graduated high school successfully, yes, even through the worst times of her life. And, you know, when I met Alexis, she is the light of this topic. And I'll tell you, you want to listen to her because she is a young adult who typically would not have this talk often. However, when you're faced with it and you're living it and you're breathing it and you're walking it, it is a whole different story. So I'm going to open it up. Alexis, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being the brave one. I would say the brave ones face reality, right? Yeah. Versus someone who may just still be scared and not really knowing what to do. So share a little bit of, I mean, obviously you've had your own losses, but bring us back to when you were first introduced to your first loss.
So I was first introduced to my first loss when I was about 9 years old. I was about to turn 10. My grandmother on my dad's side had passed away from complications of dementia. She passed from a stroke, and she lived with us for about 5 years, and we took care of her since I was about 4 years old. So talking about death was always kind of a big conversation in our family and our household, because we knew that something was going to happen eventually. And my father had already lost his dad when he was about 15. So the importance of talking about death and also getting into stuff like pre-planning, which is what you do, was always a super big thing. And he made sure that, you know, when time comes for his mom, that we were all educated too. And he was very big on making sure that my mom was talking to us about it as well.
Yeah, I admire that about your mom, because she has been very open. It still doesn't take the hurt away. It still doesn't take the loss away, or the, you know, the uncertainties, but it certainly does make the difference for you that day when someone else can take over. And yes, I do pre-planning with one of the largest companies here in Las Vegas. And so you're 9 years old, your first loss. So then you're going into high school. Talk to me about that, because that in itself, for someone to go through high school and have like just you're going through trying to navigate, thinking about, oh my gosh, this is the last 4 years of my life. Yes. What am I going to do after? And then what happens?
So after my grandmother had passed away, my dad had gotten sick immediately after, and he was diagnosed with renal failure, which is kidney failure. For 5 years after that, my dad had suffered a series of seizures. Yeah. He suffered a series of 4 seizures prior to him passing away. And during that time, there was just a lot of family chaos going on, which was already hard in itself, you know, going into high school. It was a very big transition in my life. And I remember having so many goals and aspirations going into school that I was like, you know, by my senior year, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to accomplish all these goals. And next thing you know, October rolls around and my dad ends up in the hospital again and is diagnosed with heart failure. We're told that he probably has about 2 weeks to live. And, you know, the 2 weeks go out and I'm getting ready for my first drill comp of the year, because I was in ROTC. Yeah. And at my drill comp is when he had his heart attack. And I was at the comp and we get a call from my mom, and she's telling us that we need to come home right away and that we need to get to the hospital. And it was a very surreal moment for me because we always knew that it was going to happen. Because when you live with somebody who is going through a disease that is eventually going to take them out, you know that it's going to happen. You're prepared for it to happen. But it never, you know, I used to tell my dad, I'm like, I'm going to cry now, because if I cry now, I'm not going to cry when you die. Because him and I had a very bad relationship. We used to fight all the time.
I call that a good relationship.
Yeah, but
that means we're a lot alike.
Right,
and
right.
we just are going to struggle to try to figure out how to
Right.
get through each other's thick heads.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Awesome.
We had a fiery relationship, just like my parents, and we used to fight all the time. We fought up until, you know, the 2 weeks before he passed away. We had a big fight. But, you know, having that happen, I remember going into the ER and going into my dad's, you know, space and looking at him and saying, even though all hope was lost, I knew that all hope was lost. He wasn't coming back to us. I remember looking at him saying, if you want to see me graduate, you need to get up. I knew it wasn't going to happen, though.
Wow.
I remember the next morning, you know, we go home that night, and I spend the night at like my teammate's house because everybody was getting together, because we were all celebrating that we had won all these trophies at competition, and nobody in the room knew that my dad had just had a heart attack and he was in the ER. And I had to sit there around all of these kids and pretend like nothing was happening, like my life wasn't falling apart. And I had been doing that for a long time. You know, when you start from the age of 4, living with somebody who has dementia, which is a very serious disease. My mom always calls it the disease of the devil, because it's horrible for you to lose all your memories. But when you live with something like that since you're 4, you don't really get to talk about your life at home because people never understand it. I used to talk to kids at school and they would look at me like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah,
like
you got
why
a
are you
crazy
going?
life.
Right. Like, why are you going through that? Right. And I'm sitting in this room with all these teenagers and they are laughing and they're having the time of their lives. And I'm thinking about how my dad's in the hospital right now. And he is nothing but a shell of his body. Like, it was hard to like go home that night. And then the next morning I wake up and the first thing I hear is my grandma talking to my older brother downstairs. And all I hear is, your father's been pronounced dead, brain dead.
Oh, shoot. So this is your mom and your mom's mom.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get the news
Mm-hmm.
that he has passed on,
Yeah.
as far as brain-wise, right?
Right.
So then you guys have to make some hard decisions.
Yes. And, you know, when you go through something like that, they have a room in the hospital. It's called the quiet room. And you sit in the quiet room and, you know, they tell you about your options. And my dad had always said, if something like that happens to me, I don't want to be here. Like, don't keep my body here. Right. So my mom was very respectful of those wishes, and she wanted to make sure that everybody else respected those wishes as well. We had a talk as a family. We found out that while he was unconscious, he was getting these like almost like tremors like in his eyes, and his face would like kind of do all these weird things. We found out that he was getting seizures like every couple seconds.
Wow. Oh, so even being,
Mm-hmm.
so his body was still going through some trauma.
Right. And his body was going through seizures every couple seconds. And the second that my mom told me that, I was like, no, we can't keep him on life support for no longer than, you know, a week. We decided we would give them the time, like all his friends and family, give them the time to see him, say their goodbyes. But we really wanted to make sure that we were respecting his wishes and his life and who he was, and not make him suffer through something that scared him so much, because the seizures were very scary for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So, you know, I think when you're in school, you're with your friends, you're having all of these things happening at home, which I think are relatable to a lot of people. A lot of kids have things going on in their home that they don't necessarily feel that they can talk about, you know, because it is crazy, but death is crazy too. I mean,
Right.
it takes us on the worst and the best days. I mean, we just went through this whole thing with the president,
Right.
where it wasn't his time. I mean,
Mhm.
that's for all of us. We're not
Yeah.
going to go any quicker or faster than it is our time.
Mhm.
So, Alexis, what would have been, what did you hold on to get through all that? I mean, because you continued to do, I was there when you graduated high
Yes.
school,
Yes.
and I saw how you guys continued to navigate moving forward the best possible way, considering all of this happening. What was that helped you do that?
I think I've always been in a state where I've been hopeful about the future. I've always told myself, even if things go wrong, things are going to fall into place for me. And I just had to keep telling myself, like, even though he's gone, my life still keeps moving. As hard as that is to say, it is the reality and the truth of everything, is that even when you lose your loved one, life continues going. And it's not something that you want to accept immediately. I didn't want to accept it immediately. I was a workaholic after my dad passed away. I was religiously, like, doing all of my practices for drill, and I would be there for hours, and I wasn't taking care of myself. And then quarantine had hit, and we were stuck inside, and I realized my body was telling me to grieve. And my body was telling me that you need to take a rest and you need to slow down. But there's also having to find the balance between when do you take a break and when do you keep going again. And that was something that I really struggled with for a very long time, because, as you know, I dropped out of school my junior year.
Sure.
And I had to make a really hard decision back then, because after my sophomore year, a little bit into the sophomore year, actually, it was only a year after my dad had passed away that my grandma passed away after that.
Okay.
So you have these consecutive deaths that happen in your life, and you just kind of have to ask yourself, like, what do I do now? And I didn't know. I struggled with that question for a very long time. And really the only thing that I had to tell myself was that I had to keep moving forward. There wasn't time for me to stop or to put a pause on my life just because somebody else's story had ended, because my story was still going.
Mm.
Sorry to talk in, like, author terms.
Yeah,
but...
well, you're an author, and a great author at that. And that's really deep insight, because when we lose somebody we love, I feel, and my own experience was, well, then I must die with them.
Mm-hmm.
Because why would I want to keep being happier? Why would I deserve to keep living when someone so close to me has passed? Mm-hmm. So you fought through it. Like, you're asking yourself questions about, your life, and that you wanted to continue living because you knew that the story didn't end there. Like, not even, and it's pretty incredible that, his story and your grandmother's stories are still going
right
through you.
Right. And I think that that's a really important thing too, when you're going through a death of a loved one, is that they were a loved one for a reason, because they were loved so greatly by you, which means that you take on parts of their personality, you take on parts of their story. And so long as you keep talking about this person that has passed, they're never really gone. And I've learned that a lot, is preserving the person's memory through talking about them and making sure that their story is always known. Like, if I have a chance to talk about my father, if I have a chance to talk about my grandmother, I do it. And I've gotten to the point where I have become more comfortable talking about my grandmother on my dad's side, which was always a very taboo subject. It was foreign to speak about her, because when we were living with her, you just weren't allowed to talk about anything, because who wants to hear about a lady that is losing her mind, right?
Yeah.
But now I've really tried to open up that story too, and remind people, like, and remind myself too, I didn't just lose my dad and my grandma, I lost another person. And I think that's a big thing, is that you don't really understand death and loss until you go through a significant one. Because you have it all the time where people lose a grandparent that they didn't even know, and they're like, well, that person just died. But then they lose somebody that really meant a lot to them, and they think to themselves, like, wow, that this actually, like, means something,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've taken that meaning and you're doing something very profound with it. tell us what you are currently doing as a result of the losses of these influential people, even the crazy one.
Yes.
We always say
Yes.
we love our family, right?
Right.
And even the crazy ones. But I think, do you find sometimes like we're crazy too by doing
Yes.
the things that we have to figure out what to
100%.
do?
Right. Right.
So tell
Totally.
us what you're doing now, because I am just so proud of you and your mom and how you've opened up this silent conversation,
Mhm.
right? It's now been taken out of the silent room
Mhm.
and put in a very open room.
Right, right. And you can tell I'm excited to talk about this because I love talking about it.
I know.
So my mom and I started a grief group, a grief share group in 2022. We started it with the company, and it was a way for us to open up a safe space for people to talk about their grief and to talk about their loved ones, because we realized that, you have a death occur, and everybody cares when the death first occurs, or when you hear that it's happening. Everybody cares when you go to the service or the funeral, but after a couple months, after all the excitement, quote unquote, goes away, nobody is really there anymore. Everybody says, like, I'm here for you, I'm always going to be here for you, but then you call them up in the middle of the night and you're like, hey, I need to talk to somebody, and they're like, I actually can't talk to you right now, I have stuff to do. And why is that? And it's because life continues going, and their life isn't impacted by a death that was so great to you. So we wanted to open up this space to people to talk about their loved ones, to talk about their deaths, and to allow them to just be able to speak on it freely, because a lot of people aren't allowed to do that. You go through these conversations with people and they shut you down a lot. They silence you and they tell you, like, I don't want to hear about that because it's too much, or I don't want to hear about that because it makes me uncomfortable. And it's okay for my grief and the death of my loved one to make you uncomfortable, but allow me the space to talk about it. And that's what we wanted to do, is allow these people to talk with us and be heard and be seen through what they're going through.
What kind of feedback are you getting from these families who are doing this?
We get a lot of good feedback, and a lot of these families, they come to us and they tell us, like, thank you so much for opening up a group like this. It allows us a space to talk about what we're feeling and what we're going through. And it's a monthly thing that we do. We hold it I believe it's every Sunday. Every second
Sunday of the month.
Yes, every second Sunday. I'm still kind of getting back into it because we haven't done it in like maybe 2 months now, because we were going on so many trips. But yeah, every second Sunday of the month we meet with these people, and our group has grown tremendously. We went from maybe having 3 to 4 members from our first group to now having over 20 members. We have opened up a youth group, which is the group that I hold and I host, and I talk to these girls that are also in their 20s or approaching their 20s. And I think it's so important to allow the younger people to have a space to talk about their grief too, because sitting in a room with, all of the adults that are ranging from about 40 to 70 years old who have lost their spouses, it's not like they don't understand what it's like to lose a parent or a child or a sibling or a friend. But it's more like, you're so young that they want to tell you how you should grieve. And you're so young that they want to tell you how you should go about your process.
That's the parent in us. Sorry.
It's the parent, yes. It's the adult in you that is like,
adult.
You're the minor, and I'm going to talk to you how I want to talk to you. And that's okay. And, I've learned a lot walking into these rooms with these people and talking to them about their grief. I teach them as much as they teach me. And that's why it's a good relationship, to be able to sit in a room and be able to hear so many perspectives. But I know that sometimes I get uncomfortable because I can't relate to everybody else. So opening up the youth group was probably the best thing that we could have done, because I get to sit in a room with girls who have lost at a young age, and they understand what that feels like. And I hope that we can kind of merge the groups together to allow everybody's voices to be heard, for all the perspectives to be heard, because I think, again, you can learn as much from me as I can learn from you. And I think that that's where an open conversation needs to be had.
I just had a moment of learning from you, Alexis, because I sometimes think I always have to be the mom,
right?
With the kids and my grandkids, and it's like I can learn from them as much as they can learn from me.
Mm-hmm.
And death is just one of these. So yes, I'm going to post all the contact information for Alexis. I'm going to post where the grief share is being held. I will post all of that with this show here today, because it's important that people are aware in the community that this is available for us to, spread the word. Like, death is not something to be silent on.
Right.
What do you think? What would you say to the person out there who feels silenced by this? What would you first recommend them to do?
I think for somebody out there who feels silenced, especially when it comes to your grief or the death of a loved one, just find little ways to talk about that person as much as possible, whether it be through writing about the person or sharing about them in little amounts in conversations. Because I think we don't only have to talk about the fact that this person died, but more so talk about who they were in their life. And it's better to remember them by who they were in their life than rather just their final moments. And that's what I try to do a lot of times with my father and my grandmother, is talk about the life that they lived instead of just the final moments that they lived. Because I think that amount of years is so much more important than just the small amount of time that they had in the end. So yeah, I think just being able to sprinkle little parts of them into conversations, or for me, especially because I write, I do so many pieces about my family members, and I talk about them all the time. And I make sure to, make posts about them, but not just make posts on their anniversaries about the fact that they died on that day, but talk about, like, my dad's birthday was just on the 24th of June.
Yeah.
And when his birthday came up, I did a whole post on my blog about how I was, thinking about the ways that our lives have paralleled each other. And I talked about his life and how he lost his father and what his life was like, going through the next 40 some years of just being without that and watching his mother. Like, there's so much more to talk about in the person that died than just their death. And I think that that's really important.
You shared that one of your grandmothers had passed on a special day, but yet not always feeling so special about it. Talk to us a little bit more about that.
So on my 16th birthday, my grandmother passed away. And she passed away at about 6 p.m. And it had been this whole day where I was so excited because it's your sweet 16. I mean, you're supposed to be excited for your sweet 16 as a girl. And I woke up that morning and she had already been sick for a very long time. She ended up in the hospital around August for something that had happened. And that night is actually very significant too. Now that I'm thinking about it, it just jogged a memory that I remember I woke up in the middle of the night and I had all these text messages blowing up my phone, because at the time, one of my best friends was dating my neighbor. And she texted me and she's like, "Hey, are you okay? What's happening? What's going on?" And the whole house is dark and I think my brother's asleep and I had just woken up from a nap, and I start texting her back and I'm like, "What happened?" And she goes, "Adam says there was a ambulance in front of your house. What happened?" And I'm like, and I call her up immediately and I am just frantic. And I remember the one thing that I kept repeating over and over to myself on the phone, and as I got on the phone with her, is, "This can't be happening again. I can't believe this is happening again. This can't be happening to me again." And come to find out after that my grandmother had ended up in the hospital. They had told her that she had a couple months to live and that she had to go on dialysis if she wanted to live longer. And my grandmother always had a really hard time with dialysis because she had really sensitive skin. So when they would poke her, she would blow up and stuff. Yeah. And it was really hard the last couple months of her life, because I was starting my sophomore year. I was in a relationship with this guy. We were in quarantine. I mean, it was everything that you could kind of not that I wanted to spend my high school years inside and not in front of people, but it was wow, we get a break from in-person school. This is great,
Yeah.
And
I loved COVID for everybody else.
Yeah, right.
I worked all the time.
Right.
I was so jealous of all these people being able to stay home. I'm like, this is the greatest thing. I watch my daughters be with their babies and their young children.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is so precious because I worked all the time with them. And so, you're dealing with she's gone to the ambulance. She's got some time.
And so, she comes home, but, after some time, she gets put on hospice. Okay. And of course, hospice is just one of those moments where you're waiting for the moment to happen. It's just getting you comfortable for when it happens. And something that my mom recalls is that when you get put on hospice, it's basically you choosing when you die. When is it going to happen? When do you want it to happen? And as much as people want to tell me that my grandmother would have wanted me to be happy and celebrate on my birthday, I know my grandmother. Nobody else knows my grandmother, so I'm gonna say she was a little bit upset with us in her final moments. Yeah. And I think it took a very long time, and I'm still doing it, coming to terms with the fact that she chose to pass away on my birthday.
So she passed away on your 16th birthday.
Yes.
When you were wanting to really celebrate and enjoy that special day, and bam, like she decided, if that is how it goes. I think people do technically go when it is their time,
right?
And unless they're promoting it, right? Or I wish we could delay it, but it just happens.
Yes.
So you had mentioned grandma was feisty, and you too also had that relationship, right?
Yes. So my grandma and I, we had a little bit more of a loving relationship than I did with my father, but she was just a feisty woman in general. Like, if you ever wonder where my mom gets it, she gets it from her mom, and I get it from my mom. Like, that's how it goes. We are the trio.
Falls from
the generations.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Yes, how they say that.
But my grandma she is one of the strongest women that I know, along with my mother. Like, they are the strongest women that I know, and I wouldn't be the woman that I am today without like the two of them, because there were also conversations with my grandma about, when I pass away, when I die. She used to tell this story to me a lot, and it's next year, on my 21st birthday, I'm actually going to get a tattoo in honor of her, because it'll be 5 years since she passed away, and it'll also be my 21st. So, but I'm going to get a butterfly tattooed on my spine, and
ouch.
Yes, ouch. But the butterfly is a symbolism for a story that my grandmother told me when her dad passed away. And she recalls the story when she was in the Philippines, that this butterfly had flown up to her. I think it was probably after the service or something to that extent. And my mom will probably correct me later when she watches this, but this butterfly flies up to my grandmother, and it crawls all the way from her toes all the way up to her nose.
Really?
Yes. The butterfly, it just crawls all the way up, and the butterfly comes up to her nose and it licks her nose, and then it flies away. And my grandma always said that was her dad giving her a final kiss goodbye before he went away. So I always took that my grandmother would come back as a butterfly. And there have been actually multiple times that I have seen butterflies when I've been talking about her, or around her anniversary or her birthday. I see these butterflies, and most of the time they will come up and they'll fly straight towards me. Wow. And I hate insects, so it always scares me. I do not like insects, but the butterflies will always come up and they'll fly straight towards me, and I know that it's her saying hello. So
there's many proven facts, stories of facts that some type of animals will be seen based on someone's love for that animal. Yes. I mean, I've heard where cardinals come back and literally stick around on a windowsill, to horses, to cats, to butterflies, to birds, to eagles. Yes. I mean, it's pretty fascinating. Yeah. So
we make this joke that my dad comes back as flying insects all the time, but he likes to come back as ugly flying insects, like moths and actual flies. And we're always like, get out of here. We're going to kill you again. Stop, go away. Right. Come back as something pretty. Why do you have to come back as something that we want out of the house? Right. So yeah, but we always make jokes about them coming back. And I think the way that I've handled the death so well is reminding myself that they're still here, they're still around. And I talk to them like they're still here. Like I'll go up to my dad's urn, I'll do our handshake like we used to do, and like I'll be like, hey, what's up, Dad? How's it going? What's going on? I'll talk to him like he's still here, because just because he's physically gone doesn't mean that he's not with us anymore. And he shows signs. I mean, there's obvious signs that they, come around.
Signs.
Right. Yeah.
Did your grandmother like celebrating her birthday? Your one that passed on your birthday? Did she like celebrating her birthday?
I would say so. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say she likes celebrating her birthday. Her birthday is actually 10 days after my little brother's birthday. So we would celebrate their birthdays together, and then plus like Mother's Day. So everybody would just get together and we'd celebrate it all on one day.
Sometimes I think, when I hear stories of a loved one passing on a special day as your birthday, your 16th birthday, or the birth of a child, or, it's pretty, can you imagine how that has to line up, how special that is?
Yeah.
So she probably just wanted you to continue celebrating birthdays big.
Yeah. Yeah. And she wanted to go out with the bang. She was a flashy woman. She was a very flashy woman.
Exactly. She knew it would be Alexis to make sure that would happen.
Yeah.
So you're going to keep her birthdays going as well as your own.
Yeah.
Talk to me more about how has this opened up to you and the understanding of your own mortality?
I think I've come to better terms with the fact that eventually one day, and my mom said it to me too, but eventually one day we're all going to die. That's not something that we can escape. That's not something that we can run away from. It's the natural course of life, and it's going to happen to us whether we like it or not. We don't know when, but it'll happen eventually. And I've just tried to live every single day now as if it's my last, and take the day as it comes. I've started to tell myself in this recent year, because I'm approaching my 20th birthday, and I have spent all of my teen years and my childhood thinking about death and grief and all these upsetting things. And I told myself, there have been so many more, life-changing things that have happened in my life that I can't let little, small, minuscule things ruin my day. You have a 24-hour day. Don't let something really small in 1 second ruin the entire 24 hours. And I've really learned to kind of tell myself, like, just take it as it comes. Don't sit there dwelling on it, or don't sit there being afraid that it's going to happen, because it's going to happen. But just live your life as lively as you can, Yeah. Don't be afraid of things that you can't control, because you truly cannot control that. But I think the other thing too is that I've also just allowed myself to understand that, like, because I'm going to pass away one day, or because somebody else is going to pass away one day, I can't be scared of that thing happening. So I try to put importance on the relationships that I have on this earth right now. I spend more time with my mom. I spend more time with my brothers. I spend more time with my friends, because I never know when a moment's going to be taken from me. And I have to make sure that I spend every moment of my life living it to the fullest.
Alexis, you do. And it's just so pleasing to hear that from someone who has had such tragedy, and take this and learn from it and get out there in the world and educate other people and other families who have had loss on how to keep thinking about their own life.
Right.
Because it's not meant to take a whole bunch of lives. It's meant for the one person to be honored. And I love what someone said to me. It's not how we die, it's when we die. Right. And being prepared for that. And you're just blossoming into this world like a butterfly. I mean, it's just so cool. It's so cool. Do your friends how far are they coming around to you talking more openly about mortality?
I think friends who aren't facing mortality or have faced mortality already, it's less of a conversation. They're open to it, and they come to me for advice, and they come to me for things that they want to talk about. But what I've noticed most is the people that have gone through a death already, they feel comfortable to come to me now. And that's something that's really important to me. ever since I was a young girl, like even before I went through significant deaths in my life, I've just always wanted to write and touch people's hearts and make sure that they feel seen and understood in a way that they're not feeling that in their current lives, because I always had a chaotic life and I never saw that in like media or books or anything like that. So I really
see the perfect life, right?
Right. We
In
see the
social
perfect
media,
life. Yes.
which is 10,000, 2,000 words,
right.
not spoken with the
Mhm.
picture, right?
Or you see these like, you watch like TV shows, and even if the families like go through these like tragedies in these TV shows, they still have like these nice big houses and these big families, and like everybody's happy and they're having a good time. And I'm like, wait, hold on. That's not it all the time, right? So, my friends though that have gone through deaths in their life already, they feel 10 times more comfortable coming to me. And the first time that I was able to like really, really see this was my senior year. We did a slam poetry unit, and I wrote my slam poem on my father. And it is one of my favorite pieces that I've ever done. I've gotten it published in a magazine, and it's just an amazing piece. And the only way for you to experience it is really if I read it. Such a good piece too. But I did it for my class, and there was this guy, like one of my classmates. I had known him since middle school, but we had never talked before. We were just always in passing with each other. And this guy was a couple rows ahead of me, and he was listening to me talk about my slam poem. And then after I went up, two people went up after me, and then he went up to the podium and he did a slam poem about his father too, who had been I think his father was like bedridden and like was using like oxygen tanks, which is something that my dad had been using before he passed away too. And he was so scared to do his poem. He was like, man, I'm going to do this poem and nobody's going to understand me. Nobody's going to, know what I'm going through. I'm so scared to open this up. And then after that, he texted me and he was like, I didn't know that your dad passed away. And I was like, it's not something that I boast around. I'm not going to go around telling everybody that my dad passed away, because I still talk about him like he's around. So people just think that he's around. But I was like, yeah, I don't really tell everybody that my dad's dead or anything like that. And he's like, well, my dad's sick. And I didn't think that anybody understood that. And then I heard your poem and I just felt like for the first time ever, somebody understood me. And that my story was being told too. And I cried. I was in tears. I was like, oh my God, I did it. Because that's my goal. That's my biggest goal in life. I think that my purpose in life is to make people feel that way and to make people feel understood through my words. So I was so blessed to be able to, talk to him and have him talk to me. And since then, I think that his dad has passed away, and he comes to me every once in a while, and he talks to me about everything that's going on. And I am one of the only people that he feels comfortable like talking to when it comes to those things. And I'm very grateful and I'm very blessed to just be in his life, because when something like that occurs, you do need people to just be there for you and to help you feel heard.
Absolutely. So what is your next big goal? Like, what at the end of your life, what will you be known for?
What will I be known for? I want to be known for a lot of things. I want to be known for a lot of things. I want to be known, more importantly though, just for the words that I shared in my life and the pieces that I've written and the stories that I've told. Every single person that I meet, I always think, you're going to become a character in my story. And you'll be a page or a paragraph or a chapter or an entire arc. I think that the second I meet somebody, I know you're gonna be here for whatever time. And I am always so blessed and grateful to be able to share the stories of people around me, because I love preserving people's memory. And so I think what I want to be known for, when I'm gone, is just the stories that I told and how I tried so hard to just be full of like love and hope and to share that with other people. I want people to see the way that I loved everyone in my life and to feel it as much too, and to understand how I love them and why I love them. So yeah.
So like a best-selling author.
Yeah, best-selling author. I want to be a best-selling author. I want to, create my content. I want to make videos. I have
speak
plans.
all around the world.
Speak all around the world. Yeah. I want to share as much as possible. And I don't only just want to be defined by the deaths that have occurred in my life or the grief that I have gone through. I want to be defined by all of it, because with grief also comes so much love. You grieve that person because you love them so greatly. And I think when I submitted my bio to you, I included a quote that is like one of my absolute favorite quotes. I found it like on Twitter, and it's, "The grief is never ending, but so are the ways that love will find you again and again." And I think that that has helped me so much throughout this journey, is telling myself that even though I've lost somebody, I will love again, and I will find love of this person in another person too. It doesn't just stop because this person has left this earth. It's all around me, and it exists within me too.
Yeah. I always call that bigger love.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we have great loss, it explodes our heart to be
Mm-hmm.
very big.
Yeah.
And some people take that to shut down,
Mm-hmm.
and some people take it to blow it up even bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you've done.
Yeah.
And it doesn't end just after loss. It's love until the very end.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful thing. So I'm going to always remind our viewers, Alexis, thank you for being here on the show today.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the impact that you are making in the young adult lives, because I was the 14-year-old girl that didn't get to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And I see you, how it would have just been so helpful for someone like me
Mm-hmm.
who didn't know how.
Right.
So you're really showing all of us how. And what would you, one final question, what would you say to the parents who are not talking with their children about death because your family was so open to it, because they were kind of faced with the reality of it happening sooner than later?
I think even if you're scared to address a topic like that, it helps not only yourself, but your kids to be prepared for something to happen. And having an open conversation really helped me allow myself to process what was going to happen before it even did. I was grateful for the talks that I had with my parents about death, and to continue having those talks even after my grandmother passed away when I was 9 years old. I think the conversations became 10 times more. And that was really helpful for me when my dad passed away, because now I knew what to expect and I knew what was coming, and I was able to process it and kind of get through it. But not only talk about deaths that are going to occur, but make sure that you're just listening to your kids anyway, because you can learn so much from them. Having those open conversations, not just about death, but everything, and allowing yourself to open up your ears to them when they want to voice something that is on their mind. Because I think it doesn't just start with talking about death. It starts with everything. When you silence your kids over one topic, it silences them for the rest of their life about what they want to talk about with you. So you need to have open conversations always. And that's what my mom has always tried to do with me. So shout out to Mom, because I think she did a really good job.
Yes, she did. And we appreciate all of you, your whole family,
Mm-hmm.
including your dad and your grandmas,
Mm-hmm.
because they're a part of today's discussion.
Yes.
Believe it or not, they've pushed us to be able to do this
Yes.
on their behalf,
Mm-hmm.
as well as for all the people out there who have passed on. We honor you. We honored them by not having this silent any longer. So I always want to remind everybody of the 5-second rule. It is so important that we remember to favor inside, make sure that we are taking care of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
living, right, our best life while we have the chance, and then valuing everyone and everything. I appreciate you being joining us here today, listening to this show. Please know that you can share this. It will be posted on the WWDBTV.com, as well as the WWDBTV Facebook, with Permission Mission Facebook, and Mary McElhatton. So we wish you a great week. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next week.